Welcome to the home of Unitarian Universalism in Bismarck, Mandan. In our Unitarian Universalist community, we can celebrate a wide diversity of beliefs, and we are guided by 7 principles which can be found on our website. As we gather this morning, we acknowledge that we are in a place with a long history. We are in a place to which Nuita, Hidatsa, Sanish, Dakota, Lakota, Tistista, Métis, and Anishinaabe peoples all claim belonging, connection, and deep knowledge. In recognizing all of our relatives here, human and more than human, may we honor who and where we are today and find our way to be right relationship here. This congregation is a place where we gather to nurture one another, to be supported on our life journey, and to put our beliefs into action through work in our communities and in the wider world. My name is Karen Larrabee, and I am a member of the Growing and Deepening Council, as well as the facilitator for today's service. We would like to extend a warm welcome to any visitors here today, and we are glad that you are here. The link for our guest book will be posted in the chat. Please join us after this service for our virtual coffee hour. We would be happy to answer any questions you have about this congregation or Unitarian Universalism. It is good to be together this morning. Welcome. This reading is an excerpt from An Irresistible Future by Groot. There is so much to fight against, but what inspires is something to fight for. Exercising our imaginations for something glorious is a radical act in a social order set up to divert our imaginations away from love and towards fear. We are invited to create a collective visioning of a future that includes both the experiences of our senses and the dreams of a better world informed by our 7 principles. We are invited to imagine what this looks like in a lived reality, to tell stories about it, offer up poems, deliver sermons, and discuss at coffee hour. If we cannot dream it, we cannot make choices for it. But we can begin making choices for it right now. Today, we are honored to have Bill Patri with us. Bill is a retired economic and cooperative development professional. He interviewed 100 people in poverty and published his findings in a book entitled 100 Stories of Hope. He is also the author of Creating Co-op Fever, published by USDA. With a major in political science and a minor in religion, Patri is a frequent writer and speaker on the interface between the 2 disciplines. Bill and his wife, Marcia, live in the Missouri River Valley, where they raise chickens and have a garden. Thank you for joining us, Bill.
Thank you, everybody, for allowing me to join with you today and provide what I hope is some helpful thinking about the reality we are facing in the world today on this September Sunday, and some optimistic thinking about the future. I'm going to start with the future first, because that's where the good news is. The future, I know, is my go-to place where I can be happy. It is the future I desire and for which I hope. But it provides me comfort, even though I most likely will not see it. I put a great deal of trust in the future because it has always been good to me. 54 years ago this fall, I rode with the Ortman family of Goodrich, North Dakota, in their 1966 Rambler Classic to Portland, Oregon. I had a small suitcase and a cardboard box, and I was enrolled in Warner Pacific College as a freshman. I'd worked that summer, the summer of 1967, for my neighbors, Art and Janice Earfley. The Earfleys paid me $1 an hour. I worked 11 hours a day, 66 hours a week, and I'd saved every dollar they paid me. And with 4-H money and FFA project money, I was able to pay my first year's tuition. I believed then in my future, and I believed that the world would need what I had to offer, which I thought at the time would be a Christian preacher. I had never been west of Bismarck, North Dakota, and so the trip itself to Oregon was mind-blowing. I smelled pine trees and I saw mountains, and somewhere in Montana, I saw a 1968 Chevrolet Impala, and it had taillights in the bumpers. I saw Portland, Oregon, 4 lanes, one way, jammed with muscle cars like Roadrunners, Chargers, Barracudas, Mustangs, GTOs, Camaros, and even a Nash Metropolitan. That freshman year, I took Bible, psychology, botany, and a class in Western civilization. Our Western civilization teacher started her class following Martin Luther King's death with a brief monologue. The exact words I don't remember, but the impact is still with me. She said something like, "This day and event belongs in the history of Western civilization, and you are part of it, witnesses to it." Somehow in Western civilization class, the outside world became real, and I switched majors from pre-ministerial to political science. My imagined future was pulling me, guiding me, and for want of a better word, sponsoring me. I needed a sponsor to prepare me for the future I hope to have a hand in building. That desired future still pulls me, and it is what has brought me to you. Don Morrison invited me to a video presentation by David Korten, who had written the book, The Great Turning. I later met Korten in person and hosted him as a speaker in Cleveland, Ohio, at the Association of Cooperative Educators. I introduced Korten to the world of cooperatives, and his Yes magazine did a special edition on this new to him idea of enterprise. Korten believed, as I do, that the future we desire can be ours, but we have to take that future back from the forces that are controlling it now, which he describes as governments and corporations interwoven in something he called empire. In part 5 of his book, Korten introduces us to how we move from empire to earth community. I'm quoting him. "Leadership for birthing this new era will not come from those who feel comfortable with the status quo or who are intent on preserving their special privilege. It will come from the people who are feeling out of step with the beliefs and values of the imperial cultures and the institutions of contemporary life. They will live into it, being by giving practical expression to the change they seek." That's on page 313 in the book, Great Turning. The future that has been pulling me along and has brought me to you is a really good place. When I see that future, the small towns of North Dakota are thriving, growing. They're using old buildings and building new buildings. This growth is driven by immigrants and refugees attracted to these places by the community's reputation. It is in small towns in rural North Dakota that people forced from their homes by war or environmental catastrophe find sanctuary among well-educated, hardworking, and honest people who see other folks as important as themselves. North Dakotans' human compassion is tempered by common sense and a good sense of humor. They too are children or grandchildren of immigrants and refugees. They know the world, have traveled other places, and they choose to live where they do. People choose these places because the inhabitants are spiritual people, seeing value in sacred things, but wise to the ways of oppressive ideologies hidden in religious belief systems. North Dakotans have thrown off the tyranny of dogmatism and racism. They have embraced Martin Buber's idea that when we recognize the full humanity in each other, in the I and thou relationship, it is there that the divine lives. The people who see others as fully human as themselves are fun to be with. And that's why communities grow. These future places are quiet and reflective, but filled with laughter and joy. They are places enriched by the steady stream of new people from throughout the world who have sought refuge here. The first mosque in America was built in northwestern North Dakota. The building the homesteading Muslims met in has been torn down. One descendant remarked that he still considers himself a Muslim, but he goes to the Lutheran church. I talked with a Muslim physician who said he had high regard for Catholics. Why, I asked. He said that when he had very little money going to medical school in his home country, Catholic monks gave him free room in their monastery. One reason these beautiful communities are so quiet is because the cars and trains are electric. It allows you to hear the meadowlark in the summer evening and the cheering from the soccer field in a fall evening as the home team scores a goal. Residents agree that in addition to the sacred human beings, the earth itself is sacred. Birds, animals, water, air, and the wonderful sky are sacred and are provided respect. The indigenous people were right. Water is life and worthy of worship. It is also worthy of protection by all people nurtured and nourished by it. These future communities are wonderful places to live and learn. Here, education and learning are also sacred. Science and history, democracy, self-government have been elevated to art forms and are celebrated. School teachers are revered, as are the skilled medical professionals who were raised here and have returned home. Healthcare and wellness are part of everyday life, and the sense of belonging has eliminated isolation and loneliness. I carry from my rural past the poetry my dad loved and sometimes quoted. Here is the type of spirituality my dad hoped for. In a poem by Leigh Hunt entitled Abu Ben Adam, the poem was written in 1834. Abu Ben Adam, may his tribe increase, awoke one night from a deep dream of peace and saw within the moonlight in the room, making it rich like a lily in bloom, an angel writing in a book of gold. Exceeding peace had made Ben Adam bold, and to the presence in the room he said, "What writest thou?" The vision raised its head, and with a look made of all sweet accord answered, "The names of those who love the Lord." "And is mine one?" said Abu. "Nay, not so," replied the angel. Abu spoke more low, but cheerily still, and said, "I pray thee then, write me as one that loves his fellow men." The angel wrote and vanished. The next night it came again with great wakening light and showed the names who love of God had blessed. And lo, Ben Adam's name led all the rest. In the future, I want to be like Ben Adam and love my fellow human beings. It reminded me of a visioning session I led in Grand Forks. As the people were talking about the type of community they wanted Grand Forks to become, one person said they wanted a community with more tolerance. A college professor who is Muslim said, "I tolerate mosquitoes, I tolerate 30 below zero. I want to more than tolerate my neighbors. I want to love them. Now comes the reality part. Right now, there isn't a lot of love for fellow humans in our communities. As recently as January 6th of this year, the outgoing president of the United States said the election was stolen from him. His followers stormed the United States Capitol, apparently attempting to stop Congress from certifying the winner of the Electoral College vote as the new president. So pervasive is the cynicism in America, a large number of Americans are refusing to take a vaccine that might prevent getting COVID-19. Indeed, language being used on social media suggests that human compassion and love for the earth and its inhabitants is for those weak-minded liberal people who don't deserve to even be here. This Unitarian fellowship has undoubtedly felt the backlash to your standing up for Standing Rock. And I don't need to tell you about the hate and prejudice that is part of our daily reality here in Bismarck, North Dakota. I want to pull you up from this reality to a more precipitous view. I'm reading Otto Scharmer's book, Theory U. Scharmer, in his introduction, describes 3 methods of coping with the crisis facing the world. These coping strategies are employed by organizations and individuals. I'm quoting right from his book. 1, retro movement activists. Let's return to the order of the past. Some retro movements have fundamentalist bent, but not all of them do. Often this position comes with the revival of old form of religion and faith-based spirituality. Second method, defenders of the status quo. Just keep going. Focus on doing more of the same by muddling through. Same old, same old. This position is grounded in the mainstream of contemporary scientific materialism. And 3, and this is where Scharmer hopes we go, advocates for individual and collective transformational change. He asks the question, isn't there a way to break the patterns of the past and tune in to our highest future possibility and begin to operate from that place? It's the third option that Scharmer's book is about, breaking the patterns of the past and tune in to our highest future possibility and operate from the future. Now, Scharmer suggests that the first step in option 3, operating from the future, is to understand our own blind spots that prevent us from seeing it. I've already told you about 1967, when an 18-year-old going to a small college in Portland, Oregon, had grown up in a small, low-income, Republican-leaning, evangelical farm home. I share now my blind spots with you, realizing calling them blind spots insults people who still are living their lives based on a thinking I no longer agree with. Some of those folks are part of the retro movement, trying to get back to an older order, and they resent those of us who have left. With an apology to those who feel hurt, here are my confessed blind spots. I once thought there was a God who loved the world so much that God sent God's Son to earth. This God allowed God's Son to be crucified, which served as a sacrificial lamb in the Hebrew tradition of sacrificing animals to please God, allowing believers in the Son to obtain eternal life. I thought there was a political party that believed in hard work, honesty, and financial accountability so that the government it controlled would take in more money than it spent. By being fair and honest with the American people, the economy would grow, and even a poor farm kid like me could live the American dream. And I once thought Jesus could become my personal savior through belief on my part and faithful practices of prayer and Bible reading. I, like many of you, have had life's lessons akin to cataract surgery on my blind spots. Here are things I see differently now that I have had those life lessons. Jesus was a reformer and a new way of thinking thinker. He was one of the best of all time. When he said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life," he was talking about a much better way of living. The truth part of that sentence means that the same thing as scientific truth is verifiable and it can be repeated. Here's a test case. What would Jesus recommend following the 9/11 attack for those following his teachings in the United States? What would it mean to love your enemies? Suppose the United States didn't immediately respond with military force, but instead sought to understand Osama bin Laden's power base. Why bin Laden thought and his followers were willing to die to drive us from their land, and that America represented the great Satan. The effectiveness of Jesus' approach can be observed throughout history. Lincoln declaring, "With malice towards none, with charity for all," at the end of the Civil War. With the Marshall Plan to rebuild Europe following World War II. Remember loving your enemies? With Nelson Mandela's Truth and Reconciliation Commission following the fall of apartheid. With Mahatma Gandhi's nonviolent approach to India's independence from British rule. These leaders perhaps learned this new way of thinking came from an intelligent human being who spoke Aramaic. I now see political parties as frail, dishonest, corrupt. I see political leaders refusing to lead to a brighter future. And I'm reminded of Dr. King's admonition that good ends cannot come from evil means. Killing people does not stop people from killing people. Hating people does not reduce hate. And darkness cannot cast out darkness. Can love, light, and kindness find a constituency in the American public? I understand why early followers of Jesus designed the atonement theory as the meaning of Jesus's life. But with the cataracts removed, I also understand that theory is inconsistent with Jesus's own teachings. Jesus's version of God would not have killed the Egyptian children to make Pharaoh release the Hebrews. I now understand that I don't need to be saved from some eternal torment, nor believe some unbelievable theory in order to gain eternal bliss. I have come to realize that for a brief speck of time, Bill Patrie lived in eternity here on earth. I didn't exist, then I did, and then I won't exist again. That seems to be the way every living thing experiences eternity. Something always is and has been and will be, and I don't need to worry about it. And now back to the future. There is something spectacular about those of us sharing together on Zoom. We've found each other in a swirling world of darkness, and through human compassion, brought some light. I appreciate in the dark times of the DAPL protest, you were the people who stood up for our fellow citizens, brutally abused by selfish corporations and racist political leaders. It was Carol Jean Larson and Karen Van Fossen who called me to find a home for DAPL protesters when they got out of jail. You are the people who defended the earth through the work of Don Morrison, and senior citizens through the work of Janice Chaney, and the United Tribes Technical College through the work of Tom Dieselhorst. Tom also kept the Martin Luther King Holiday Commission alive when Governor Schaefer sought to dissolve it. I join with you today in celebrating the world about to be born, acknowledging a long and troubled pregnancy. I am pleased to have met you all and have learned about your work. I hope in the time we have alive on this earth, we might just get a glimpse of that new world we long for. Truly a heaven on earth, filled with sisterhood and brotherhood and healthy babies and healthy families on a healthy earth. Share and live the dream. And thank you for all you have done to make it real. Thanks for inviting me.